Welcome to Success Training with me. I'm Greg Moody, and I'd love to talk to you about our next life skill, which is communication. Communication is defined for us, or our slogan that goes along with communication is understand first and be understood second. So we're going to talk a little bit about this from our book, Life Skills of Leaders, and we're getting all of our curriculum for our normal life skill training from this book, but today we're going to talk about it in a little bit more depth. And this is really material that we use a little bit in our basic program, a little bit more in our Master Club training, and then in depth in our leadership program, and in very great depth, especially in our instructor program for this topic, because everything about being an instructor is really about communicating. And one of the key tenets, and you can see the first chapter, communication. One of the key tenets, now communication has a lot of different components to it, but one of the key tenets is listening to be able to communicate. And people say that all the time, and they say that you need to listen. And one of the slogans that we hear a lot of times is you were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that's an idea that goes around and around that people hear. And it's a funny slogan, it's a funny way to think, but one a little bit deeper way, and that why our definition is really important, is to think about being, understanding somebody else, understanding and fully getting what they're saying prior to being understood. Well, let's talk about the basics first. We'll talk about the last part that I just said in our further follow-ups here. And for us, there's multiple things that we're going to work on. Level 1, our first level, is really nonverbal skills. So we have to be able to communicate effectively nonverbally. Words and how we communicate, what I'm saying right now, is really only represented or understood by other people as about 7% of communication. In other words, what you say and the words that I speak, it only represents about 7% of what somebody else understands. Voice qualities, so how you're talking, the tone that you use, is 38% of what people understand. And your body language, your posture, the way that you look, is 55% of the overall part of communication. So if you look at communication from that point of view, most of what we have, or most of what we communicate, is going to be body language and tone rather than the actual words that we say. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have good grammar, or you shouldn't try to speak more professionally, or you shouldn't try to learn all your skills that you learn in English class. But body language and tone is very important, and practicing that's important. For instructors or for people that are going to learn to speak in public, just sitting in front of a mirror, or in our world right now, in front of a computer, and recording yourself and how you're speaking and paying attention to that is really important. For our martial arts training, one thing I just talked to our high rank 6th, 7th, 8th degree black belts, so I'm the 8th degree, in our classes last night, is to record ourselves doing our material so that we can see what we look like. Most of the time, you don't really get to observe what you really look like. You think you know what you look like, you think you know how you sound, but until you watch it from a different point of view, watching what you're doing, you won't really get it. You won't really understand. You think that you communicated words, you think you communicated tone, you think you communicated body language, but unless you see it, and we have this great opportunity now with technology that's super easy, you won't really be able to improve the way that you're communicating from a body language and tone point of view. So those are the 3 levels, or the 3 types of communication that we want to improve. So that's the first part. So level 1, our nonverbal communication. So one of the ways that we communicate that in our martial arts classes, and we do it a lot, is by how we stand. We stand at attention with our hands at our side. When we stand at attention with our hands at our side, we don't have our hands over our front. We have them in the side of our body. Another way we do it is by bowing. So we bow, we don't shake hands, we don't go, hey man, how's it going, and thumbs up. We can do those things, but we do it formally, and bowing represents respect. It's a little bit different in the United States society because that's not a common thing. And we do that on purpose, even though our martial art comes from Korea and it's common in Eastern societies to bow. We want to keep that culture up to bow because when it's different, people will pay more attention to that. So bowing is really important, not just because it's comparable to shaking hands, but it's also because of its difference, it communicates a little bit more that you're showing respect to somebody because of its very difference. Just like when you're communicating to somebody and you use different words. If I use the word great all the time, hey, you look great, that's okay, but people get used to that. But if I use the word great and I say today, the next day I say, hey, you look awesome. The next day I say, hey, you look fantastic. Next day I say, hey, you look incredible. Next day I say, hey, you look amazing. When you change what you do, then the words sink in more. They get noticed more. So bowing allows us, from a nonverbal point of view, to get noticed more. Okay, the other things that we practice, and so for parents that are listening, this is really important for kids to learn because they don't learn how to do this properly, is how to shake hands. We do practice that. How to do listening position on one knee. Standing and sitting, we do that exactly right. And then everything else we do, whether it's executing technique, standing, sitting, how we walk into class, everything we're doing, we're training on discipline, but we're also training how to communicate. If we communicate that we're a disciplined person, then people are going to start learning that. And that's how we get body language down. So the other chart, or the other thing that you can practice when you're looking at the mirror, and there's a page in our book about this, it's on page 72, is nonverbal communication. And I like this drill because parents, for kids that are younger, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, they have a lot of trouble understanding what feelings are communicated. So, you know, smiling, looking happy, sad, being a frowny face. There's a lot of in-between emotions. And if we can start helping kids by looking at, I mean, this chart's useful because it shows, it's a little bit hard to see there, but this chart has different faces, and you can ask your kid, what do those faces represent? What emotion are they communicating, or how do they feel is a better way to say it for a kid. They should be able to identify it, but they probably won't be able to the younger they are. And you can do that when they're watching TV or watching a show. You know, how do they feel? What are they thinking? And when you start asking kids to identify emotions at younger ages, it helps them understand emotions better, and it helps them communicate emotions. The earlier they can do that, the better they're going to be at communicating things later in life. And for those of us that are adults, if you've ever had any bosses, partners, coworkers, anybody that you've ever had a problem working with, a lot of times that's because people can't properly verbalize emotions. Now, for some people, it might seem like psychological mumbo jumbo. Well, it's based on psychological research that people have trouble with this. It's not made up stuff. It's very, very hard science that people have trouble communicating specific emotions. And then if they can't tell you how they really feel, it's really hard for you to fix problems in the future. Parents, do this with your kids. Just ask them, how do you think they feel once in a while you're watching something? So more on nonverbal, and then we're going to wrap up. Well, I guess the last thing, we covered everything here. So I guess we are wrapped up. Last thing I'd say is watch yourself. Watch yourself in the mirror. Watch yourself when you're, if you see yourself videoed, or when you're doing video conferencing now, because that's really common. Just kind of pay attention to whether or not you're using, how you're using your hands, how you're sitting, how you're looking. The other thing to do is pay attention to how other people look, how other people are standing. If they're, you know, having their hands like this and their body like that, just pay attention to that. and think about what they maybe are communicating when those kind of behaviors or those kind of, how if they're sitting like this, what does that communicate? And do you want to communicate those things? Grandmaster Ozuna is famous for, if you're one of his students and you do this in class, he fines you $50 because this kind of communicates that you're not really open to listening. That's him. I probably won't fine you that. But this is a way for you to start developing some skills and be aware of how you're communicating nonverbal things. Okay, that's it for today. We finished up on nonverbal. That was really short because you could take a college class on nonverbal communication. I hope that was helpful for everybody, and I hope you have a good day. I look forward to seeing you either in class, in person, or online soon. I hope everything is going great on your way to black belt, and we're going to make sure we get to black belt and way beyond. Have a great day.